right, we are live here on the True Mets Talk post-game show. This is such a special stream. A lot of you all, I just want to say this. We have to start this off because this is a huge win for our New York Mets. But we have some New York Knicks news to talk about. Mikal Bridges is officially a New York Knick. I know Junior in the chat was talking about it. I know my Wi-Fi is not holding up right now, and I do apologize about that. So hopefully the technical difficulties do go away. But Nick, how are you doing today with our Mets and Knicks?
Life is good, baby. Life is good. You know, we take the Bronx Bombers, we put them in their place. They make it a little bit dicey. Okay, they give us some reason to get a little bit nervous. But then as we are closing out that game and taking game one of this Subway Series, the Woj bomb drops, and the Knicks have acquired Mikal Bridges for Bojan Bogdanovic and a bag of balls. I mean, come on. Life is good.
Life is great. I'm going to be talking Knicks probably tomorrow as well. We got to hop on maybe an off-season podcast. I know you dropped one earlier today, so make sure you go check out the He Did This To Me podcast. I'll be talking OG Anunoby, probably talking about maybe Julius Randle if this has any sort of implications on him. But nonetheless, we got some New York Mets baseball to talk about because they are victorious in game one of the Subway Series in Queens by a score of 9-7. It got a little bit dicey, not gonna lie to you. Got a little hairy there. I started to shake a little bit. I was like, oh boy, especially after that Judge Grand Slam, which just kept on going and
Just
going.
kept going.
I'm like, what is going on? But you know what? If you all are here, please hit that thumbs up. A lot of Mets talk. A lot of probably creators are going live right now in spaces, etc. We appreciate you all being here with us. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. Channel just passed 800 subscribers, and continue to hit the live chat with your thoughts. Now, before we get into anything in the game, like I said, my internet is acting up a little bit, so I want to continuously check in with you all. And Nick, if you lose me connection-wise, please let me know. But I just wanted to be very upfront about that because this is such a huge stream, and it really sucks that I have to deal with this after the Mets beat up on the Yankees. But nonetheless, let's talk about it because obviously we're going to get into Garrett Cole's performance. He was seeing ghosts in Citi Field. He got touched up by this Mets offense. We are going to talk about Garrett Cole and that performance, right, with the offense because they put up 9 runs. Let's talk about the pitching line, primarily David Peterson and this bullpen. First things first, I do want to get this out of the way. Daniel Nunez is an absolute stud. 2 2/3 innings pitched, only 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts, no walks. Relieved David Peterson, who was only able to go 4 1/3. He held the Yankees at bay, David Peterson did. He did a great job in that. But you know what? The pitch count was just going up and up and up. And he really, right, even with the 8 strikeouts, got himself into a lot of counts and a lot of at-bats where the Yankees were just fighting things off. So, couple of trouble innings for him here and there. But I will say, I don't ever expect David Peterson to go more than 5 innings. I expect 5 innings, but never more than 5 innings. And today just reassured me in that notion that we are probably never going to consistently see anything more than 5 innings out of David Peterson. But I will say, props are due. He put away hitters, 8 strikeouts. He did have the 5 walks, which contributed to him leaving the ball game early. What did you make of David Peterson before? I just want to ask you about David Peterson because we got to talk about Adam Ottavino too. But what was your what was your synopsis here on the Mets pitch?
Honestly, when it came to Peterson, I tweeted during the game when he got touched up there a little bit in the 4th that, Peterson going to Peterson. It's what he always does. He's always shows you brilliance at certain parts in a particular outing, and then he's always going to have that one particular inning where all of a sudden you see all of the bad attributes that he has. And in this particular, contest, you look at that first inning, comes out, doesn't look great. He's able to wiggle out of that and not give up a run. And you feel like, whew. and then he does his thing. He's rolling along. Just the inning just before, and there was not a lot of time in between innings. Maybe he didn't get enough time to rest, but the inning just before, he was out there rolling, and then he comes out. And I'm sorry, but when you're up by that many runs, and this was kind of a theme throughout the night, you cannot put guys on base for free. Way too many free passes with a 5-run plus, lead, and it bit him, and then it continued to bite the rest of our, pitchers throughout the game. But at the end of the day, hey man, Peterson did enough, and when you have an offense that's rolling like ours, you don't have to be perfect on the mound.
Absolutely. And this is something we're going to continue to have conversations surrounding, right? The Mets pitching staff and how that directly relates to this bullpen, right? We talk about Daniel Nunez. There's really not much else to say about Daniel Nunez other than the fact that he's been such a gem of a find in terms of the production value ever since coming up to the New York Mets. I believe a 2.69 ERA and about just over 18 innings pitched so far this season for the Mets ever since being called up, and the rest is history. That is a guy you can continuously use in high leverage situations, whether it's the 7th inning or the 8th inning, or if something happens, or if Reed Garrett's not feeling it, right, like he was tonight, then minus the grand slam, of course. But you can use him even in that closer role during this Edwin Diaz suspension. And I don't really know what you think about that Edwin Diaz suspension. So we're going to sort of backtrack here. I just want to get your thoughts and opinions about how that all played out and that MLB rule as it pertained to this particular situation in Chicago. Just real quick, right? Just give me the Spark Notes version of it. What did you think about that situation? Do you have any sort of just problems with it, I guess, or do you think that it's an even shake?
Well, I mean, it hasn't been an even shake for the Mets in recent years. We get at least one guy suspended for that every year, the last 3. And to me, the biggest issue, I don't know how sticky his hand was. I saw pictures of his hand. It looked like there was something on there. I've also seen pictures of other guys' hands when they go out to pitch. And that typically is what it looks like when there's some rosin and some sweat involved. I'm not sure about any of that. What I am sure of is you cannot have a situation where certain times a guy gets a chance to go and wash his hand off, and other times the guy doesn't get that exact same chance. Whatever the rule is, it's got to be universal. It can't be this much variance. Major League Baseball has to fix that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I dropped a little podcast episode before the Subway series talking about it. Quite simple. Spark Notes version for myself is that we're never going to know what the substance is. Hell, these umpires don't even know what these substances are. If you look at Vic Carapazzo's, I guess, report, the only thing that he states definitively is that he has done these checks over 1,000 different times, and now he's able to differentiate what's just sweat and rosin and dirt versus what's not. I mean, is that sufficient? Is that a sufficient explanation to anybody? That's unacceptable, especially when you're talking about handing down a 10-game suspension to a very important ball player in Edwin Diaz, especially with how he's looked after coming off the IL with a rolling red hot Mets team. And they continue that, right? Shout out to the offense for getting stuff done. But before we get into said offense, we have to talk further about this bullpen. We don't know what this situation is surrounding Drew Smith. Obviously, he came in to relieve Mr. Edwin Diaz, got short, I guess, he got a short shake on the warm-up pitches, got 2 outs, and then exited the ball game. I haven't personally heard anything on Drew Smith, but I also haven't seen him IL'd either, so I'm guessing it's either a blister, something minor, and he'll be back relatively shortly. Although the question still remains is, do you IL him given that you need that roster spot, right, for a bullpen guy that can pitch more often than not during these next 10 games with Edwin Diaz out, because you don't get that roster spot to fill now that Edwin Diaz is officially suspended. You don't get Edwin Diaz's roster spot back. But an even bigger news here, and it played out in this game the way it's been playing out for the majority of 2024. And Darren is saying it best here. Salute to Darren. Appreciate you being here. Adam Ottavino and his continuous struggles with his command and his continuous struggles with his ability to escape innings unscathed. Tonight, multiple walks, 2 earned runs, and only 1/3 inning pitched. This is unacceptable, especially with a lead that you have been given. We need at least one inning from the veteran righty and Adam Ottavino. And I'm just going to say this right now. David Stearns has shown absolutely zero remorse in being proactive and cutting the loose ends with people and guys that aren't performing on this team. Even with this hot stretch, Adam Ottavino cannot be safe. Maybe he might be safe during this Edwin Diaz suspension, but we're going to be having different conversations, especially with what Carlos Ramos is bringing up in the chat about David Peterson potentially moving to the bullpen. Tyler McGill, same thing. Hell, maybe even the pitcher that we see tomorrow night for the Mets and Sean Manaea having that experience in the bullpen in the past if they don't want to bring anybody else up. So, quick take on Adam Ottavino because we're going to get into the firepower of this Mets offense next because it was such an incredible performance. What do you think about Adam Ottavino?
So Ottavino, it's interesting because recently Ottavino, he had a couple outings where he started to look like maybe he was riding the ship, and he's a really important piece. And we obviously, it's somebody that we went into this season counting on to be one of the key contributors in that bullpen, and he hasn't been that. He's been terrible. And again, he did the same thing that Peterson did. Basically, it was the theme throughout the night. You got Peterson with the back-to-back walks with a 5-run lead. Ottavino comes in, he starts walking people, gets yanked. Young has that walk against Soto. You cannot walk him right there. Not with Judge coming up next, and with you being lefty on lefty, you cannot walk him right there. So we just did that over and over again throughout the night. And Ottavino, at this point, you cannot rely on him. Okay, he's straight up mop up duty when you're up by a good amount of runs. You cannot put him up in a high leverage big spot, and that is a problem for the Mets when that's the case. Shout out to my guy MEZBX in the chat. Love some Bronx love in a Mets podcast for sure. And situational pitching once again. Garrett 0-2 pitch on Judge. He grooves him. A slider, middle, and we know that ball still might not have come down. It's probably on the BQE somewhere right now. So it's like, we got to be smarter with the situational pitching. Our pitching coaches, or Mendoza, whoever needs to speak to these guys and say, throw strikes when you're up by 5 or 6 runs, and when you're up 0-2 on the best hitter in baseball, please don't throw them a middle off-speed pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Rosie's saying this is a second grand slam that Garrett's given up. It's not good. Reed Garrett really has looked like a shell of himself recently. Do I fault him for coming into such a tough position, bases loaded, facing one of the best premier hitters in the league? I don't. But like you said, right now, this team is rolling. It's next man up. Reed Garrett was that man to get the 9th inning. And even the 8th inning there, that last out, he's got to get that out. And the walks just continuously hurt this team. Like, there's so many sayings in baseball, especially from the pitching aspect and the perspective, is like, you can't walk hitters, especially leadoff walks. But nonetheless, walks in general always find a way, more often than not, to come around and score and bite you in the end. You got 5 from Peterson. You got a couple from Adam Ottavino. That one to Juan Soto from Danny Young. I mean, that is a miracle, right, within itself, that the Mets won this ball game. And 7 runs. Are we even surprised that the Yankees put up 7 runs on this team right now? I'm not sure. But the thing is that we're talking about a win. The pitching has to get better. Am I confident right now in the Mets pitching, right? Both the rotation outside of Luis Severino and this bullpen moving forward without Edwin Diaz? It's hard to say. There's been a lot of rumors speculating in terms of Sean Manaea and his future with the team. Same thing with Luis Severino, although we're not talking deadline. I refrain from talking deadline. I'm not even sure why Luis Severino's name is coming up in trade deadline talks anyways, with the Mets being a half game out of the wild card or 1 game out of the wild card. It doesn't make sense to me. But nonetheless, this rotation needs help. Christian Scott should be back up on his way to the New York Mets this week, but this suspension from Edwin Diaz really puts a wrench in things in terms of the overall roster capacity that this team can carry in terms of as far as pitching goes. So We'll save that discussion maybe for the off day on Thursday, right in between this Yankees and the Astros series. We'll come back and reevaluate. Obviously, Edwin Diaz will still be on suspension, but we'll be getting a little bit better of a look in terms of what roster spaces are available, who could be good send-down options versus who isn't, and we will talk about a move that the Mets did make earlier earlier today before the game in terms of Ben Gamel and Marte. But we'll save that here for a couple slides. Let's talk some offense, baby. Let's talk some offense. I'm rambling about the pitching. Let's talk offense. This offense has been producing. And honestly, it's been ever since the first go around that you've been on this podcast post game live when you're talking about lineup changes. Everything collectively, there's been a few stinkers in between from here and there, right? As expected. But dude, you can't argue this offensive production right now. I mean, Mark Vientos. Can we talk about Mark Vientos? Mammoth home run in Chicago. Behemoth home run today in the second deck off of Garrett Cole early on in the ball game. Brandon Nimmo, Harrison Bader. These guys are producing. This is unbelievable. And by the way, quick little stat. I did see this before the game started. Garrett Cole in his career, 5.89 ERA collectively against the New York Mets. It seems like they are one of the few teams that has had his number in recent years. It always seems like Garrett Cole against the Mets, there's just something off. Now, I understand that Garrett Cole, this is his second start after coming off the IL. But listen, we're not here. This is not a Yankees podcast. We're not here to make excuses for Garrett Cole, especially a pitcher, right? As good as he is, that the Mets have quite simply owned in recent memory. Man, this is fun to watch, Nick. And as long as the New York Mets bats are this hot, I'm not saying that what we see in terms of the pitching category is acceptable, but it makes it easier to watch. It makes it less nerve-wracking. I won't go that far. It's still pretty nerve-wracking, but it takes the pressure off a little bit, right? Because you get up 9-1. You're expecting this game to be a breeze. Now, the Mets bullpen has other plans about that, but man, listen, I don't even know what to say here. Top to bottom, these guys are producing, and Francisco Lindor starting off the game, one of the best leadoff hitters in the first game, producing another double in that category tonight. What do you think?
I love Lindor in the leadoff spot. Obviously, the production, everybody knows. He's starting to hit the ball with authority the opposite way, which he did with that leadoff double that he had. And especially with the fact that they just left the bases loaded, no out situation with 0 runs for us to come in the bottom half of that inning and get the scoring started, I thought was very important. And, Brandon Nimmo, everybody was screaming he's not a 3-hitter, but damn, he's a good number 2 hitter. I mean, he's exactly what you want in that 2 spot, and that's why I was advocating for it, because he takes pitches, he gives the ability of that guy, if that initial man gets on base, he gives him the ability to see some pitches and possibly swipe one, and then he this year all of a sudden is really turning on that high inside pitch. Remember, that was a pitch that his entire career gave him a lot of trouble. He could never get around on that high inside pitch. He would hit balls up the middle. He would hit balls, sometimes turn and, on a low ball and get that one and, get some raise on it and get it out into the seats. But that high inside pitch, like that ball he hit for a home run tonight, that is not a ball he ever hit for a home run earlier in his career. So he's clearly worked on that. I liked what the broadcast said about the fact that, he might swing at some pitches out of the zone when he's in a hitter's count now, because he has a different mindset up there. He's not up there just trying to slap it around and trying to take pitches and walk, basically, which is what he did to, some decent success for a lot of his career. But now he is driving the ball. He's too big. He's too strong. He's got too much, hand, eye, and bat skill to not be somebody who is a producer for us and not just be up there looking to pad his own base percentage. So I'm very, very, very happy with what I've seen from him recently. Not a number 3 hitter, great number 2 hitter. Martinez ends up being 1 for 5, doesn't have a great game, but everybody around him, he carried us for a little bit. There was a point where he carried us, where he was all the offense. He's come back to earth here a little bit recently, and everybody else has stepped up their game. Not a great night for Pete, but did end up getting an RBI. And Vientos, I mean, this guy, he's got scary power, man. He's got scary power. You know, I think it was Ronnie who called him Stanton Light. Hopefully, you know, he's a little bit more pliable and he's not pulling a muscle every time he exerts himself like Stanton, but he's got that type of power. And like you said, in just the last week, he has had 2 monster shots, you know, well over 400 feet. And, you know, again, the Alvarez effect, it's clear. It is crystal clear with this team what Alvarez brings with his energy, his attention to detail, and his ability to not only frame pitches, but just always be on top of everything. Did you see when he was given the clock is cut? Like, come on, man.
Yep,
This
that was
guy, he's
huge.
electric.
Yep.
Everybody talks about it. And it's great to have him back. Our record with him speaks for itself. And the Mets offense right now, it's looking like the offense that we all hoped it could be. No person can say we thought it would be this good. Nobody can. Okay. Not going into this season, but we hoped it had a chance to look something like what it's looked like the last 3 weeks or so. And all we can do is hope that we can sustain this up through September.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to follow up with that, but you beat me to it in terms of Alvarez's impact, right? If you don't see it with the naked eye, you can see it with the Mets record with Francisco Alvarez versus without him. It's very readily apparent. And what I will say about Francisco Alvarez, we know what he does behind the dish. His discipline at the plate, you see here drawing 2 walks, it's been getting exponentially better and better and better. There's a lot of pitches that he's now taking, kind of like a reverse Brandon Nimmo, although I think Brandon Nimmo can more easily flip that switch on and off, right? He probably does it instinctually, maybe on purpose even, Brandon Nimmo does, but Francisco Alvarez, he's been very methodical about his approach at the plate recently. A lot of falling over last year and even in the beginning of this year, right over the plate, especially on sliders away. He's now just spitting on those pitches and watching them in the dirt go outside, and he's taking his walks when the walks present itself. And that is the making of a more mature hitter than what he was just maybe a month and a half ago. So I needed to point that out. Ricardo is saying one of the Mets that he doesn't want the Mets to trade at the deadline is Harrison Bader. Has a couple of base knocks again. He's been on absolute fire. Has Harrison Bader. And how about the guy, Jeff McNeil, gets it done today in the most Jeff McNeil way possible with those 2 base knocks? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say anything about Jeff McNeil in terms of him turning it around. I'm going to need to see a whole hell of a lot more than that. And I'm still going to be advocating for Mr. Jose Iglesias to play. But I will say, if you think this Mets offense is scary right now, if Jeff McNeil somehow is able to turn it around, now I'm not saying he is. I'm just saying if he finds a way to just turn it around, even slightly, we're not even asking for 300 plus anymore. Just continuously get on base. Give me 240, 250, not 215,
80% of typical squirrel. Give us chipmunk. Give us chipmunk. We don't even need you to be squirrel anymore. Just be chipmunk.
Just be the chipmunk. That's right. And even that'll do it, man. And even that'll do it. And this will transform this offense even into a scarier offense, right? And I'm not expecting Jeff McNeil to go out there and spray the gaps, hit the ball over the fence. That's not his game. But if you fear the number 8 hitter, right? And as good as Harrison Bader's playing, and you don't want to walk that 8 hitter, right? And you don't want to walk the 9 hitter because Francisco Lindor is then coming up as one of the hottest leadoff hitters. Like, where is the hole in the lineup at that point? You can't find it. And I think that's why a lot of people are advocating for Jose Iglesias to just keep playing right now and ride the hot hand and the wave, and that is because at that point, like, you close pretty much all the gaps and the holes in this lineup. Because really the only hole in this lineup right now is Jeff McNeil. Who would have thought we would have been saying that, huh?
But let's keep it real though. Iglesias, I mean, the guy, there's a decent amount of ink on the back of his baseball card. We know that he's not going to be a super productive hitter. If he was a super productive hitter, he would be all-star with the type of glove that he has, and he definitely wouldn't be a guy that was out of baseball not too long ago. So I just think that overall, when it comes to Mendoza, Stearns, they probably all have a mindset of, we don't want to totally lose this guy, McNeil. We don't want to just totally lose him. We throw him on the bench, and then we lose his production and his headspace for the entire season. As you said, we're lucky enough to be able to bury him at the end of the lineup right now. So you bury him there, and you just hope that he just becomes a fraction of what he once was, and then he's a very dangerous, asset out of the eighth hole.
Yeah, and I will say, the reason why I'm advocating for Jose Iglesias and everybody is just quite simply ride the hot hand, like I just said before. I'm not saying that Iglesias is this all-star caliber player by any means, right? Him at the top of his game versus McNeil at the top of his game, right, who are you taking there? Maybe you could just say you take Jeff McNeil at that point, right? Because of what he's produced in years past. But
100%.
right now, we've given Jeff McNeil all the chances in the world. So, especially during this stretch of baseball where the Mets have to win more games than not, that's where I'm coming. That's where I'm attacking that angle from, right? With that second base kind of platoon role. But anyways, nonetheless, that just reinforces the point, though, that this offense is rolling. 9 runs on the board. If you're just joining us, we appreciate you joining us. Make sure you're subscribing to the He Did This To Me podcast. Make sure you get Nick and his father over there on the podcast. 200-300 subscribers. If you're new here, they talk Mets, Knicks, Jets, everything in between you will find on their channel. Make sure you keep hitting the live chat in this stream with your thoughts and opinions. Anybody have a player of the game? Would anybody in the chat like to throw out a player of the game? I'm not even sure who I would give it to. Probably maybe like a Mark Vientos, I would say, is my player of the game, just with the 2 home runs alone, couple RBIs. You can make the case for Brandon Nimmo with those 3 RBIs. It's a toss-up. Who's your player of the game? Put it in the chat. And as always,
Nunez.
That's a good one too. I will say that's a good one too. I will say I like that. Hit that thumbs up on this stream. Get this stream to 20 likes. There's over 20 of you all on the YouTube. There's more than 30, 40 of you all on X. Hit that like button. Get us to 20 likes. Appreciate you. And if you're new here, whether you're catching the replay or catching this stream live, make sure to subscribe for Mets content. We appreciate you all being here and taking the time on your Tuesday night after such an electric win. The Mets improved to 38-39. Offense is rolling. Pitching needs some work, but they're holding it together. Let's talk about this right here. Starling Marte, this is not a huge topic. I really don't want to get bogged down by this, but we did see a transaction today. We were wondering what was going to happen to Starling Marte, obviously exiting game 2 of that Chicago Cubs series with some knee soreness. There was a little bit of inflammation found on the actual bone, I guess, of his knee. And so therefore the doctors recommended he rest at least 15 days. And therefore the 15-day IL was produced here in order to get another outfielder up. But I will say, as much as the Mets like to have these lefty-righty options and replacing a righty with a righty, right? You had Trace Thompson there available, has 15, 16 home runs in AAA. Ben Gamel. This guy, right? And there is something to be said for you have Tyrone Taylor as your bench bat. And then you have DJ Stewart as your lone lefty. So maybe get another lefty in here, which is what Ben Gamel produces. Wasn't in the lineup today, but maybe we see him instead of DJ Stewart here in the future. This guy's been raking in AAA. If you haven't been keeping up with the Syracuse Mets, 45 games for Ben Gamel, 314 average, 423 OBP, which is insane. 962 OPS, which is insane. 7 home runs, just a little bit of pop, not as much as Trace Thompson, but a little bit of pop, and 24 RBIs. Now, I was coming at this from the lens of give me the guy that has more pop, give me the guy that plays better defense, and give me the guy that is the righty to replace Starling Marte in more of a likely scenario. But I wasn't going to sort of critique or criticize either of these guys who came up for Starling Marte. But I will say, I'm not sure how much you know about Ben Gamel. I'm not sure how much I know about Ben Gamel, other than the fact that he's absolutely raking in AAA and that he's an 8-year vet in this league. That's really all there is to know. I'm not expecting him to make worldly production and sort of contributions to this Mets team right now. I'm not saying that, but what do you make of this move? And more importantly, sort of the focus area here is how concerned should we be about Starling Marte? Because we keep seeing these leg injuries pop up from him. He's not getting any younger. We know he's been using his legs, although he hasn't looked as good with his legs out in the outfield as he's done on the base paths with the stolen bases. You have a guy that's been kind of consistent at the plate in Starling Marte. Let's be honest. He's been consistent at the plate at the very minimum. But you already have an everyday DH in JD Martinez. And the only other place that you can put Starling Marte, if not left field, which might take a little bit of pressure off of his legs in the outfield, is DH. So what happens with Starling Marte, and anything to say about the Ben Gamel call up, maybe instead of a Trace Thompson here now?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that Stearns did was he built up our bench and our situational players. I mean, I was thinking about that early in the game, just watching Tyrone Taylor, watching this guy Bader. Like, it seems like the situational outfielders or like that journeyman, jack of all trades infielder that we typically have is a guy who gives us absolutely nothing at the plate. And this year we have guys that might not be world beaters, but they do have the ability to give you something. So therefore, we're able to weather the storm, have Marte go sit down, get it right. He has to play in the field because, like you said, JD Martinez is going to be your number 3 hitter, and he is going to be your DH every game that he's healthy. Except for the occasional rest game for the rest of this season. So at the end of the day, Marte has to be able to play the field. So go sit down, get right. Hopefully we can weather the storm. It makes me nervous. It makes me nervous because the Mets just recently got hit with the 2 things that have been our bugaboo the last 2 seasons, which is Marte going down. Our offense has gone as Marte has gone for the last two and a half seasons now, really. And then Diaz being suspended and not being available. And that's why tonight was such a big win, because if you get up big like that and you let them come all the way back, now this whole Diaz is out thing becomes a much bigger story, and the entire team starts to feel that pressure of the fact that we don't have our closer, so we have to play everything perfect. And as we saw last season, even if you have a strong bullpen, you take away the head of that bullpen snake and the rest of the body all gets ticked up one. And now you see guys making mistakes because they're in situations that they're not prepared for and that they're not accustomed to. So I think it was huge that we were able to go ahead and close this out. But when it comes specifically to Marte, take your time, buddy. Get yourself right. Come back, be a dangerous guy. Maybe he can be a little bit stronger in the field. He's got a strong arm typically. He, has decent instincts, but there has been some balls that fall in front of him this year that are somewhat puzzling.
Yeah, and Ricardo's saying it here as well. With his contract, he's becoming a real expensive DH. I'm just
How
not
many more
quite
years does he
sure.
have, though? How many more years does he have in his contract?
I want to say it's just one more
It's
after
just one more.
this.
It's one more. It might be an option. I'll look it up.
I don't think it's an option, but I think it's definitely one more after this. Yeah, it's one
Okay.
more, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what his market's going to be in terms of the deadline. I don't think the Mets absolutely need him. But anyways, like I said, we'll talk deadline when it gets here. I'm not talking deadline. By the way, I'm not talking deadline fully, like in having a honest and open conversation about the deadline until after July 4th. I assess this team after July 4th, and that's when we start talking deadline. That's it. We're not even into July yet. Catch me after July 4th. Just for everyone's awareness in terms of the expectations of what's going to be happening on this channel. I'm going to try not to talk about it with Rob. I know he's going to talk about it sooner, but I'm not going to talk about it until after July 4th. Just a forewarning. What I will say though is I want to get into the actual workings of, and like I said, we'll revisit this on Thursday. Perhaps we'll have like a Mets off day stream on Thursday, and I'll revisit this sort of conversation. But there needs to be, like I said, one corresponding move in my mind to get another reliever in the door here, right? You have this move, Marte getting IL'd, you bring Ben Gamel up, but this doesn't solve the bullpen sort of woes that the Mets may not, right, experience during this DS suspension. There's a couple of things the Mets can do, and looking at the options available to them. Now, I don't know who they trust in terms of DJ Stewart or Ben Gamel, right? We haven't seen Ben Gamel produce for the Mets in the Mets uniform in Queens so far this season. We'll see if he gets an opportunity and in what sort of capacity. There's a couple of things the Mets can do. One, they can play one bench guy short. If they choose to do that, they can go ahead and do that. You'll have Luis Torrens and Tyrone Taylor as your two righty bats, and you'll have to choose from either DJ Stewart or Ben Gamel as your lefty bench piece. That's one option. And by the way, Tyrone Taylor has no options left. So it'll have to be DJ Stewart, who only has one remaining, or you just cut ties with Ben Gamel. That's how that works. Two, this is the conversation surrounding Tyler McGill and his status with the New York Mets. I'm not convinced in Tyler McGill, and quite frankly, I don't think any of us should be convinced with what we've seen from Tyler McGill, his flashes of brilliance down to his lowest of lows and everything else that comes in between with Tyler McGill. One day he's DeGrom 2.0. The next, I don't even know what sort of comp to even just put him at. Anyways, Tyler McGill does have an option left. But the problem is that the Mets are in a 5-man rotation right now. They've refused to go to a 6-man rotation this entire season so far, regardless of what's transpired with the injuries, with the suspensions, whatever. They have chosen to go with the 5-man rotation. Tyler McGill just pitched a few days ago. Tyler McGill's next scheduled start is Saturday versus the Astros, and there's an off day between now and that start. You can send Tyler McGill down and bring up a bullpen arm to serve out the rest of Diaz's suspension, maybe a Jose Butto. Maybe even that's how they utilize Christian Scott and calling him back up. Or what you can do is just send down one of Danny Young or anybody else in this bullpen that you don't like, cough, cough, Adam Ottavino, and DFA him if that time comes, right? It could be the writing on the wall, and move Tyler McGill to the bullpen. There's a couple of different ways the Mets can maneuver this, but I only say this as a little bit of a side conversation because the Mets are stuck in between a rock and a hard place with the bullpen help they need versus losing that roster spot that you can't replace while Diaz serves his suspension. So just some food for thought. Like I said, we will revisit this discussion in some sort of capacity, right? Whenever that is. But I will say the most likely option is going to be Tyler McGill. So make sure you're tuning in to what the Mets have in store for Tyler McGill. Just watch out for his name in the headliners. We'll see what happens with what David Stearns chooses to do. But Nick, any thoughts on that before we move on to game 2 tomorrow night?
Just real quick, when it comes to McGill, I think a really good comp for him when you're talking about former Mets, Mike Pelfrey. He reminds me a lot of Mike Pelfrey. Big, strong guy, has flashes of brilliance, and just drives you crazy. He just doesn't lick his hands nonstop like Pelfrey used to do. That shit was so weird. But I'm not convinced that McGill is the guy, but I also don't want to give up on him just yet, especially, just his size, his stuff when it's on. He's just got to consistently throw strikes. And he's one of those guys that I could definitely see the Mets giving up on and him blowing up somewhere else. So, the book is not, the jury's still out on him, in my opinion. And I would like to keep running him out there. But yeah, we have some very, very interesting decisions to make in these next, 9 days with, Diaz being on the shelf.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to shout out Ricardo, member of the channel. Definitely appreciate the support. Can we give Harrison Bader some love? He's a wizard in the outfield, not only defensively, but his bat, which was the main question mark for me coming into this season. If you all know me earlier on, I always go back on things that I was wrong about, and being skeptical of his bat at the beginning of the season was definitely valid. I think a lot of people were, and I think there was every reason to be skeptical of Harrison Bader's bat and his availability with his injury past, but he's been available and he's been hitting the piss out of the ball recently. 272 batting average, 28 RBIs, and a 723 OPS, which is more than serviceable and beyond what I've expected so far in terms of the contributions out of his bat so far this season. So
He's
absolutely.
another energy guy too. He's another
Yes.
energy guy like Alvarez. You can see it. It's palpable, but it's coming off of him. And my buddies who were Yankee fans, they told me before the season, they said, yo, you're going to love this guy's energy and what he brings.
Yeah, 100%. No doubt. I mean, uh, that's it. Energy guys. We need energy guys. That's it.
Real quick, I got to throw this out here just because it cracked me up. First of all, I did not even see. I somehow I missed this today. I had a busy day today. I didn't even know that JD Davis was on the Yankees. I don't know how, but somehow I missed that. JD
Oh, yeah.
Davis, one of the most frustrating Mets to me personally ever, and he looks just like the Great Gazoo. If any of you are old enough to remember, the Great Gazoo was the little Martian guy who would come on to the Flintstones back in the day. It looks like his helmet is huge. Like, remember when David Wright, after he got hit in the head, all of a sudden he was wearing that big ass helmet and he looked like an absolute catastrophe?
Yes, that was horrible.
It was horrible. He had the stiff neck. With the big helmet, it was a bad scene. JD Davis, I don't know if he's just got a big ass head or what, but he always looks like he's wearing a helmet that's a couple sizes too big. And as a Mets fan, how many times have you seen JD Davis do exactly what he did when he comes up in a big spot? He's the man when you're down by 3 runs in the 9th inning. That's when he's going to smash a solo shot. Always, all the time. Always doing the most in the least important moments, and in the big moments has nothing for you. And it was just funny to see that, and nice to see it over there, in gray and blue instead of orange and blue.
Yeah, 100%. I will preface this by saying absolutely, I think his head's just a tad bit too big. It gives me a very big reminiscent moment of David Wright in that hideous helmet that he had to wear way back when. But I will say I did meet JD Davis. I got to say what's up to him when he was a Met. Very cool guy. It's just an infuriating ball player from the plate and defensively, really having a lack of a position. And I agree with you. That double play in a huge situation where the Yankees needed him the most was very on brand for what he provides. So hopefully, like I said, I'm getting the internet bar here. Hopefully you all are able to hear me. If
you're good,
I'm
loud
good,
and clear.
All right, I'm good. It made me chuckle though. This was not a podcast that I was expecting to bring up the likes of Mike Pelfrey. I gotta give you credit on that one. That's an A1 comparison. I like that a lot. But as Ricardo's saying, hit the thumbs up. Please, we appreciate the support. Thank you for supporting us and being here. You could be anywhere else talking Mets baseball with anybody else, any other creators, but you're here with us. We appreciate you. Shout out to all the other creators, by the way, doing a great job holding it down for the Mets community. Lane says, let's go Mets. A lot of beta discussions here. Jeremy, appreciate you. Darren, always appreciate you. A lot of loyal supporters to this channel. I can't thank them enough, man. But let's move on tomorrow because Carlos is looking at Sean Manaea starting tomorrow. And so am I, because we have game 2 to talk about in this Subway series. And we haven't even mentioned one time this entire podcast how good it feels to just beat the Yankees, dude. Like, we haven't even been talking about that sort of like quote unquote rivalry, because guess what? Contrary to popular belief, we don't overvalue these series with the Yankees. There's nothing to overvalue here. These are 2 games on the schedule for the Mets. And Yankees fans, you should know this tune the best because you always say it. This is our World Series. We haven't mentioned how great it feels to beat you all tonight once this podcast. So spare me with that. That's first off. And you better believe I'm going to have a little bit of fun trolling the Yankees if they decide to lose both of these games with Garrett Cole and Luis Gil on the mound versus David Peterson and Sean Manaea. I won't get too ahead of myself, but I'm just saying the way that this series had lined up prior to the start with their 2 best pitchers on the mound versus David Peterson and Sean Manaea, it's kind of funny. it's kind of funny how those worlds align. But like I said, I came into this series expecting a split. This is how the Subway Series always seems to shake out between these two teams. No matter who's better, no matter who's playing, it always seems to shake out that these two organizations split the Subway Series. So we got game 2 tomorrow. Game 2 probables. Like I said, Sean Manaea, Southpaw 4-3, 4.16 ERA versus Luis Gil, who has exploded for the New York Yankees so far this season. He's 9-7 with a 2.77 ERA. Luis Gil, if you don't know, is a 3-pitch combination guy. Heavy fastball, heavy changeup, and has a slider. Those 3 pitches, but he's absolutely phenomenal at what he does. His command's great. He's 97, upwards of 97 with the fastball. So he's got electricity. He's got life on the fastball. And his changeup, by the way, is 92 miles per hour. So you get a 5-mile-per-hour differential between his fastball and his changeup, but the movement on it is still wicked. What are you expecting going into tomorrow? I'm genuinely curious. Like, are you confident in a series sweep here, this 2-game set sweep here? Or are you a little bit more down to earth, even keel? Because like I said, it always seems to be these two teams splitting this Subway Series. I'm curious because like I said, it's a miracle to me. And I just kind of got sidetracked because I low-key in the back of my mind right now still have the Michael Bridges news in my mind. And I'm just going to endlessly scroll Twitter and just put up maybe some graphics to talk about in a pod tomorrow or something like that. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's just kind of funny to me how we haven't mentioned one time on this podcast how good it feels to beat this damn Yankees team.
So I'm really not one of those Mets fans who is super concerned with the Yankees. I really don't even hate like the Yankees per se, as much as I have very good friends that I grew up with that are all Yankees fans. So I was always in the corner defending myself. Shout out to my man David Wright for that walk-off against Mariano Rivera, which I got to watch in my guy John Gubitosi's bedroom with him and a bunch of other friends of mine that are all Yankee fans. And I was the only Met fan by myself standing on business for the New York Metropolitans back then. But overall, when we go to this next game, the one thing that you notice when you look at the record of Gil is that it's 9-7 with an ERA under 3. So clearly he's had a lot of tough luck losses. And I think if we want to win this game tomorrow, it's going to need to be another one of those. I would love, please prove me wrong, Sean, but I do not see Manaea going out there and holding that Yankees offense down. And then with our bullpen, especially getting taxed tonight and then not having our typical closer, it seems like we're going to have to score some runs once again tomorrow night if we want to be able to figure this out. It's a lot easier if you get out and you score those first, just like we did tonight. And I think that if we are going to figure out a way to pull this one out and get the sweep, we're going to have to hand Gil another tough luck loss.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that guy has everything working for him minus those 7 losses, right?
It's
And I
crazy
know
that he's 9-7 with a 2.77.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Especially with
it
that
is crazy.
offense.
Absolutely. And they've been kind of on a slide recently, right? They've hit a little bit of a rough patch, and I know that the Baltimore Orioles have kind of caught up to them. I'm not enamored by anything Yankees, so I really don't bother to flip the switch, even if they're on national TV. I just have no interest in watching them if they're not playing the Mets. But you hear just like news clips, etc., of how things are going. And obviously, this guy Luis Gil is lighting it up this season. So it's going to be a very tough matchup. Daniel's saying, holy crap, same way. Only Mets fan in my family. Everyone else is a Spankies fan. Let's see here. I think Jeremy said the same thing here. Only Mets fan in the family as well. B. Stearns is saying, not concerned. Mets have knocked out great pitching this year in this stretch. And that's really what they're going to have to do as well. You listen, one thing that I didn't mention in this episode and this stream right now that we're doing is that I believe of the home runs that the Mets hit tonight, I think, what did Keith say? 3 of them came on the first pitch. And I know everyone loves to work counts, but this team recently has made it a point to jump on pitchers early, and good pitchers, might I add. Shota Imanaga, early count swings on Shota Imanaga to get him out of the ball game really early in Chicago in that matinee game. Same thing with Garrett Cole tonight. This is something that they consistently, like B. Stearns is saying, do two good pitchers. They don't wait around to get late in the counts and go down 0-2, 1-2 because great pitchers are going to put you away with their off-speed pitches, if not the high fastball that a lot of hitters are susceptible in terms of being late on. So what do you do to curb that? You swing at strikes early in the count, and that's what the Mets have been doing. And I honestly think that that is part of the reason why they've been finding that much success other than maybe some lineup changes here recently, right? I really think it's been that approach. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch, really.
The situational hitting of late has just been leaps and bounds better than it has, you know, up to that point this season. And really, in these last few years, that's been the one thing, even in the times where we were overall, scoring some runs, the situational hitting hasn't always been the best. And it seems like that's something that there's been an uptick with. From reports. It's JD Martinez and some of the conversations that he's having with guys, Lindor really being a leader. And it's something that we obviously need to continue to see. We don't have a juggernaut offense. We have a very solid, deep lineup, especially if we can go in with a mindset and a game plan. And that's what I see from Mets hitters more recently, whether it be, hey, we're going to jump on this guy early because he always gets ahead of people. And then once he's ahead of you, you can't deal with him. He's going to put you away. So we're going to jump on him early. I think that the Yankees tried to do that against Peterson a little bit today, but Peterson was able to weather the storm and have a more effective outing than Cole was, obviously. And as long as we continue to go up there with a game plan, with a mindset, and hit and deliver and execute in situations, then we have a very strong offense. We have a lot of professional hitters. It seems like everybody has a better eye at the plate recently. I mean, Alvarez, it might be, was it a blessing in disguise that he got hurt and he got to sit and watch for a little while? For a young guy, sometimes that can be a bit of a blessing in disguise, though he was hitting pretty well before he went down. But recently, since he's been back up, his plate discipline and him getting behind 0-2 in counts and then working it back full, but not being up there trying to take a walk and still driving the ball with authority when he gets his pitch. And I hear a lot of them in, post-game talks recently talking about waiting for my particular hit or being in my particular count and knowing that this is when I have to attack. And it seems like we might be a little bit late to the party as an organization when it comes to that situational hitting, but it's been a breath of fresh air to see it here recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to shout out Ricardo for catching the typo here because I honestly got ahead of myself and this makes a lot more sense to your point where it didn't make sense for Luis Gil to be 9-7. He's actually 9-2. I saw 2.77 ERA with 97 strikeouts, a lot of sevens on my screen, and he's actually 9-2. So that makes a whole lot more sense. Now we can put the pieces of the puzzle together to understand that. So I apologize for misleading everybody. But like Carlos Ortiz is saying in the chat, 9-3 after tomorrow, or so we hope. That's what I'll say. So I apologize about the typo, not to mislead anybody, but I agree. Last point here before we finish up here, getting in about 55 minutes on the stream is Sean Manaea. Quite simple. The Mets are going to have to put up runs because Sean Manaea is quite simply another Mets pitcher in this rotation that I don't trust to go north of 5 innings if he even gets there. He can have a great stat line, but he just throws too many pitches. His put away pitches sometimes are non-existent. The command on his off speed, right, in terms of trying to get that put away pitch is not consistent. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Sean Manaea. Although the Yankees lineup, I do believe, struggle mightily against lefties as opposed to righties. So maybe that is Manaea's saving grace. But what I will say is that all I'm asking is to give me 5 competitive innings. It doesn't mean you need to give up no runs or 1 run or even 2 runs. I'll take 5 innings of 3-run baseball because I do believe in this offense to keep pace. And I know
we just tax the pen like that. After we just tax the pen like that,
they're going to be taxed. They're going to be taxed regardless.
What I'm saying is we need 6. And I know that's a crazy number to ask Sean for, but seriously, we got no Nunez tomorrow. He's definitely not going to be available. He went what, 2 1/3? So he's definitely not going to be available. Drew Smith, he's totally up in the air. If we don't get at
Hauser's gonna
least
be
6,
the long man. Hauser's gonna be the long man. You're gonna get at least three from Hauser.
fair. Okay. Okay.
That's like 8 innings right there between
Okay.
Manaea, from what I'm asking, and Hauser, and then you
I'm
get
with you.
maybe, I don't know who closes it out. That's how I foresee it.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So we'll see. I'm rooting for Sean, man. I really do. It's been a season of up and downs for him in terms of the stuff that I've seen, but let's hope for the best. Game 2 tomorrow. They got game 1 out of the way. I came in asking for a series split, and I want to go away wrong and satisfied with a series sweep. Give me both games, man. The Mets are rolling, and it's not going to get any easier after, because they are playing a red-hot Astros team that they have notoriously struggled against in seasons prior, right? In most recent memory, it almost seems like the Astros always have the Mets number. But to round this all out, what a damn win against the Yankees, man. That's all I'll say. We get the Mets win over the Yankees and Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks for pennies on the dollar.
Nova Knicks,
Versus
baby.
what we heard. Yeah, versus what we heard that the Nets wanted in exchange. So great night to be a New York Mets and Knicks fan. Thank you all for tuning in to CP's Mets and Knicks. A lot more Knicks talk. I apologize. I've been slacking a little bit with the Knicks talk on the channel. Was meaning to drop an episode today talking about OG Anunoby. That's going to happen tomorrow, and it's going to be ever so important because this changes the ballgame in terms of bringing Mikal Bridges in. And Nick, I know we're busy. I know we have differing schedules here, so I appreciate you being here on the post game. We're in 2 different time zones. We got to get together for a New York Knicks offseason episode and talking about the latest happenings and the rumors, because free agency is coming up. It's going to be a big offseason for our New York Knicks. Make sure you're subscribing to Nick and the He Did This To Me podcast at He Did This To Me on YouTube. Hit him a sub. Give him a sub. If you are subscribed to me, please take the time as soon as this is done, which is going to be in about 2 minutes, and go over there and subscribe. You won't regret it. Objective and optimistic next Knicks, Mets, and Jets talk. There you go. That's my plug for you. I think I'm getting better at it. I always have to plug, but I keep getting better at it, I think.
Fantastic job. Fantastic.
As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button and thumbs up on my stream as well and my channel. I definitely appreciate you all being here. Find me on X, Instagram, and YouTube at CPNY Sports, all that good stuff. I want to shout out everybody in the chat. So many of you all to sort of name by name, but you know who you are, rocking with me since day one. Ricardo, Darren, Daniel, everybody. Carlos Jr., I appreciate you all. Josh, B. Stearns, thank you all so much for the support. And if I missed your name, please don't be offended. Jeremy, everybody, have a great night. Let's go Mets. Let's go Knicks. We'll see you all TBD on a post game tomorrow, but definitely a pregame with myself and Rob. Pregame is going down. Let's go Mets, everybody. Ride the wave and just win. See you later.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel.